Live, I think.
We are live.
Yeah.
Hi, I am Dave Rohde, and I'm the CEO and founder of Paleo on the Go. We have Cristina Curp here, and she is the genius behind the Castaway kitchen. And you can find her all over social media. Great stuff on Instagram and on Facebook. And she's the author of Made Whole, which can be found on Amazon, Costco, Barnes & Noble, and random bookstores
All over.
throughout America.
Yes. Hi.
So how are you doing today?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing good. So we're still no real relief from the heat down in Florida. But
Really?
yeah, we had one nice day Saturday. It was amazing. And then last night was so humid. I was out at this bocce league, and it was so sweaty. It was 9 o'clock at night. Crazy.
Wow. I'm a
Yeah.
little jealous though because here it's been in the 50s and it's just pretty cold. Like that's a legit Florida winter, right? 55. And I'm already really cold, and everyone's like, "Oh no, it's just starting. This is fall. This isn't winter." And I'm like, "What? Like it gets colder?" So I'm terrified.
Your first year, right? Gosh,
Yeah.
good luck.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm gonna
Yeah.
need it.
All right. So I guess we'll get right into it. We're going to be talking about, I guess, all things keto today. So the ketogenic diet. Maybe we can start with just what exactly keto is in a simple definition or simple form.
Yeah, definitely. So eating in a way that's like to get your body into ketosis, right? So ketogenic diet is named that because you eat in a way that your body is creating ketones for fuel, and how you get there is that your body can use fat or sugar as a fuel source for energy. Like we don't break down protein for energy, like protein does other things, but we use fat and we use sugar, carbs, and any form of carbs. Turn into sugar in the body essentially. And most of us at this point use a lot of sugar for fuel. That's what we run on, right? Sugar burners, I guess is the term. We depend on that glycogen. And keto is kind of going back kind of to a metabolic state that humans probably enjoyed more frequently before this access to constant, carb consumption, grains, and all that. So when you're in a ketogenic state, you've depleted your body of glycogen, specifically in the liver, and now your body is metabolizing fat. And it metabolizes fat, and it creates ketones, and then it uses that for fuel. And the great thing about using fat for fuel is that it's like slow burning fat, like slow burning fuel, whereas sugar burns really fast. So we can only store up to like 2,000 calories in glycogen at a time, and then we like burn through it, or it's stored as body fat. But we have over like 80,000 calories of fat for fuel kind of stored on our body at all times, not just in our liver and in our muscles, but when you're in ketosis, when you're fat adapted, you can actually access stored body fat for fuel, which is really why it's so popular as a weight loss tool. So yeah, that's the short of it, keto.
So I guess people who are, well, I'll ask this first. So I would say keto is not, all keto is not created equal. It's become a huge buzzword, and I've been familiar with it for a long time with the Walls protocol, the modified ketogenic diet, which I really like, which still allows for a ton of nutrient dense vegetables and everything, and just increasing the fat and some other tweaks. But it seems to me that there are a lot of people going into it usually to lose weight, not really. I mean, it's also an amazing tool to heal the body, I believe, but they're going into it without a whole bunch of information. And it's so keto isn't necessarily paleo or clean or AIP, but it can be. So maybe you can explain a little bit about kind of those
Yeah,
and how you see that.
definitely. So the interesting thing is that I think keto, as it was prescribed originally, right? Because it's not new, right? It's newly popular, but it's actually been around. used in clinical settings and by numerous doctors to treat diseases for a really long time. And when you go back to clinical keto, it's a lot higher fat, and there's definitely like a therapeutic control over carbs. However, it's definitely a big emphasis on sourcing. I really like, there's a really good documentary called The Magic Pill, and they really talk about this, and they actually do a really good parallel between ancestral health and keto. And I think that at its roots, the ancestral health movement was a big part of the ketogenic movement. It just got lost along the way, because you tell people they can eat fat and still lose weight, and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I can eat bacon, I can eat cheese, I can eat fried food, and it sells well. It's easy to sell the idea of eating all your comfort food, right, and kind of drinking diet soda and still losing weight. But you're right. I think that's a short term. That's because you can maybe lose initial body weight or retaining or water, but you're going to eventually hit like health issues, right? Like chronic health issues that come from consuming processed foods, which, as we know, our society today, that's one of the biggest issues, these dietary related illnesses. So approaching keto from the ancestral health, like funnel, as I call it, right? You come down that real food funnel, you're going to be eating in a way that truly mimics how our ancestors ate. There's going to be some intermittent fasting. There's going to be a lot of protein and, plant sources. And think about things that are easy to forage, like nuts, seeds, leafy greens, like things like that aren't super calorie dense. I mean, we are wired to love the sweet stuff because it was so scarce back in the day. So we rarely had those really sweet, ripe fruits. However, now that same like lizard brain, or that same primal instinct to gorge on the sugar because it's going to be calorie dense, it works against us because we've got a store down the street packed with sugar. So keto just taps into eating in a way that our ancestors ate, eating really in a way that you get that metabolic flexibility where you can kind of burn fat and sugar kind of in and out without kind of skipping a beat. And that's the goal, really, because if you're burning fat most of the time, fantastic. But hey, let's say you have like a ton of veggies one day, God forbid, it's okay. You're going to burn through that, especially if you're active. Because like I said, glycogen is fat burning fuel, and then you'll go back to burning fat again. So yeah, lots of different ways to keto. I loved, you're right, Dr. Wall, she does implement it in her Wall's protocol, like further down. It's like one of the steps, and very nutrient dense. And I think that's really where the magic happens.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking too, you'd mentioned you eat, God forbid, a bunch of vegetables one day, and then you're off the wagon or whatever. But I think that from what I've seen, people, they get really scared about that. Like even just one day or one meal, there's a lot of fear, and that creates maybe a little bit too obsessed. And then I think also some of those people are going to sources that are not very nutrient dense to get the fat. But you kind of went into it, but they this is kind of losing my train of thought. But just what would you say to people that feel like they're off the wagon? Just that attaining that state of keto comes right back, or it's not necessary to stay like that all the time, or just stick with your normal lifestyle and get back on track? Or
so there's different approaches, and I think it depends on your goals. And I think Mark Sisson said it in his book, Keto Diet Reset. Like you're not going to gain weight, or like there are like repercussions to like eating too much broccoli, right? It's just common sense. And it's really hard to let's say eat yourself out of ketosis with broccoli, with a green vegetable or kale. However, I will say, because keto has been used in therapeutic ways, and this is I think where there's like this, it kind of splinters off. There's people with brain cancer and Alzheimer's and autism or like diabetes, and like medically, like they are working with their doctors to treat conditions. Like, yeah, if they're on a zero carb diet, or they're people who really have to watch it, great, but that's under medical supervision for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
The average Joe who wants to just lose weight and reduce inflammation, they don't have to be that strict. They're probably like not having, severe issues. Even a type 2 diabetic who's still using insulin and treating it and is trying to wean themselves out of insulin maybe has to be a little bit like stricter when it comes to tracking, but that's a really good incentive to make sure that when you are eating carbs, you're getting it from whole food sources. You're getting it from green vegetables and avocado. You're not getting it from, treats and the flours and the sweeteners and the little Franken foods, which it's interesting because all the things that really add up carbs on a keto diet are those little snacks and treats. Because even when you go to make like a keto dessert, you're still, people sometimes use dairy or they use a lot of coconut products or almond meal, coconut flour. They're not bad foods, but used in moderation. But if you try and make them up a big part of your diet, it's going to add up quickly. And then next thing you know, your 20 grams of carbs or whatever in your day came from the cookie you ate, the keto cookie, versus eating a salad. And I think that that's where people go wrong. They choose that cookie or the comfort food over eating a plate of colorful vegetables. And it's hard. I get it, because sometimes you just want the damn bread. Mm-hmm. But I think as long as you're making those choices, choosing unadulterated food first, you're not going to go wrong. I tend to go with, I allow myself, because so people, and I know like people like to count carbs really strict. And I think that when you're new to anything, it's normal, it's typical to kind of go hard or go home, kind of go a little evangelical, because it's almost a survival instinct. You have to go hardcore because you feel like if you're not all in, you can't do it. And I understand that mentality. However, as you experience and you start learning about your body, how many carbs each of us can handle is so different. Like it really has to do with your blood sugar stabilization, if you're insulin resistant, how active you are. Just depends on where you're from. Like some people really digest fruit well or in tubers and others don't. I couldn't handle sweet potato when I first started keto. I tried it for my carb ups. I tested my blood sugar. It was wild. Now, 2 years later, I can have sweet potatoes and my blood sugar doesn't spike at all. It goes from like 82 to like 100 and then back down to 82 within an hour. Doesn't mean that sweet potatoes are part of my everyday diet, but if I have a really intense workout, I'll have some sweet potato afterwards and I'm not out of ketosis. My body just uses that glycogen really quickly to help repair my muscles after a workout, and life goes on. And that's where I always tell people, keto is not a food list. It's a metabolic state. Mm. And how you stay in ketosis, it's going to vary from person to person. And that's not a popular opinion. I get it, because everyone wants a manual. They want the rules. They want the black and white. And it really doesn't exist. Like, not if you're going to be successful in the long term. You have to kind of do your own research and test, find out what works for you. And that attitude of like figuring stuff out, I learned that from the Autoimmune Protocol, which is why I love elimination diets, because they set you up to be your own detective. And so, like, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. I was just going to ask, since there's misinformation and genetic differences, I was going to ask, is it for everyone? But also, I was going to ask, what's a good way to start? So you'd mentioned the Autoimmune Protocol, and I'm definitely going to say start with real food and just go that route instead of, I'm going to eat keto and I'm going to do it in this way, which is just totally, deprived of nutrients. But what would be a good way for just someone who's interested to start?
So one of the best tools, I think, for starting keto, I love Rob Wolf's book, Wired to Eat, because he really explains insulin resistance, and he also explains how blood sugar affects the body and why we have certain cravings. And that book in it has a 7-day carb test where you like eat different carbs and you test your blood sugar. And that's the thing, like you asked, is keto what's for everyone? And the answer is yes and no. Like I think anyone can benefit from keto because it's almost an overcorrection for the overconsumption of processed sugars and carbs in today's society. But even like a balanced paleo approach can be ketogenic for the right person. Like my husband, who's an endurance cyclist and burns 6,000 calories a day on a bicycle ride, can eat 150 grams of carbs easy in a day and be in ketosis. Chris Fromm, the world's fastest cyclist, is keto, essentially in ketosis, but the man still eats like a ton of carbs because he's burning through them so fast. He is in ketosis. He is in nutritional ketosis. And even in a lot of programs like Keto Gains, and they have a boot camp, some of their CrossFit coaches do eat higher carbs per day. So their meals are more paleo than keto, but they are enjoying ketosis because of their personal like dietary needs. And I think that that's where things get lost. Like people think it has to be one way or the highway. So I love the 7-day carb test because for me, I learned I was really insulin resistant before I went keto. And that was my goal for going keto. I wanted to reverse my insulin sensitivity and, to improve my insulin sensitivity. And it did work for me. That really helped. And it also let me know that I had to be very careful with my choices in foods, like which foods I was going to put into my body to fuel my body. When I was eating carbs, I definitely stuck to whole food choices. I felt better that way. And essentially, I always tell someone, try something for 30 days. And a really good way to do it is do an AIP or just go paleo first, especially if you're coming from standard American diet, and then cut out honey, maple syrup, fruits, and starches. So like you can do paleo, but omit the tapioca starch, cassava flour, sweet potato, yuca, plantains, those foods. Limit fruit except for some berries, and see how you feel. And then next step would be to maybe tweak that even more, right? So like if you want to go a little lower carb, higher fat, you definitely need the fat. You're going to be starving, right? So like add avocado to your meals, some bacon, eat fattier cuts of meat like ribeye, coconut oil, like Primal Kitchen dressings, like stuff like that, just to kind of compensate for those calories that if you're omitting starches, you have to give your body like another fuel source, right? So
yeah. Are those? I was just going to ask about good sources of fat. You just named a bunch. Are there more?
Yeah. So you can actually use any fat. Unfortunately, our body will use fat for fuel, even if it's crappy fat, like hydrogenated vegetable oils. But those are like the free radicals, and they're not stable. They get rancid. You don't want that because those are going to be inflammatory. So you want to use good quality fats. And so the best kind, if you can have ghee, which I'm right now I can't, not that I react to the lactose and casein free, but I think just a hormonal component. But ghee is really good because it has MCTs and fat solubles like vitamin A, D, K, and it tastes really great. Coconut oil, avocado oil, olive oil, even though I wouldn't cook with olive oil, just for after dressings and stuff like that. Rendered animal fat. We've got it so far, but tallow, bacon, lard, I love the bacon fat. You can buy leaf lard, chicken, schmaltz. Oh my gosh, so good. Duck fat. Rendered animal fats are excellent sources of good fats. And yeah, those are
awesome.
Yeah.
I want to go back just for a second. You mentioned AIP as a good start, and I don't think we mentioned. Not everyone on here would know what that means. So it's the Autoimmune Protocol. So why is that a good place to start?
I love the Autoimmune Protocol because it's the gold standard of elimination diets. And I think that when you're going to, when you're going to change your diet so drastically, while the Autoimmune Protocol seems a little harsh because no coffee, no chocolate, no seeds or nuts, no eggs, it's really hard. Mm-hmm. However, oftentimes people try something and then they try, and they're like, I don't feel good, it's not working, and then they give up. But when you go to the AIP, you're already eliminating any possible foods that are probably making you sick to begin with. Mm. So and for me, nightshades, I'm a perfect example. Nightshades are one of my biggest triggers. Tomatoes, eggplant, potatoes, any kind of pepper, not black pepper, but bell pepper related thing. Had I done just typical paleo, I wouldn't have known. I would have been doing paleo saying, this isn't working, I'm still sick, I still have inflammation. But because I learned about the Autoimmune Protocol and it omitted these foods, right, these otherwise healthy plant foods, I now know that they don't work for me, that they are inflammatory. So even when I went keto without nightshades, and I saw I had this great success because I already had the little cheat sheet in my back pocket. I knew what was going to work and what wasn't. So the Autoimmune Protocol is, I mean, there's so many resources now. It's not like how it used to be. Oh my gosh, even 3-4 years ago when I did it, there was like maybe 1 or 2 blogs, and now there's tons of blogs, tons of cookbooks. You can eat really well. I mean, your company, all your meals are Autoimmune Protocol compliant, which is fabulous, and especially because, you know, people have a hard time knowing what to cook or having to learn how to cook this way. And you can eat really well and be able to do this elimination diet and find out your trigger foods before kind of going further into, you know, down the rabbit hole, as I say.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you mentioned 30 days and sticking to it. And I think that's a big commitment for a lot of people. But if you really want to get better, you know, you're going to do it. But it does help to have stuff like Paleo on the go, which, yeah, all our food is Autoimmune Protocol compliant now, which is really cool.
That is awesome.
It's been developing amazing meals. So even if you are a chef yourself, you know, you could supplement whenever you want with these, because the meals are frozen and shipped right to your house. So it's really great. So you know, work it in with, you know, whether you're single or you know, a couple or with a family. We have a lot of different options. So it's paleoonthego.com. I'm sure you're familiar if you're tuning in right now, people out there.
Yeah, I mean, I keep them, and like I have them all the time. Like I'm always cooking, and I definitely have a fridge full of food. But when I'm home and by myself, like my husband's not here and my son, like I don't want to like make a whole meal because I'm gonna have to cook dinner anyway. So I heat up one of yours and I'll have that after the gym. And like a lot of the meals are low carb. They're already doing like AIP, and they're keto friendly, which is kind of like my weird little niche. And the hard thing about combining keto and AIP is that the Autoimmune Protocol traditionally relies quite heavily on starches, on, you know, for binding purposes, just for filling, for calories, and then keto traditionally relies heavily on like nuts and seed butters for fat and eggs for like a source of protein. But it's doable. AIP and keto is doable, and I actually have done several like resets, I call them, because I find the combination of both healing approaches to be very powerful, because you're addressing like blood sugar issues and gut health at the same time. It's going to help your hormone health. It's very like anti-inflammatory, because ketones are anti-inflammatory, which is kind of awesome, and like really good brain food. So you're getting rid of that brain fog. Difficult to do, but again, powerful tool. And it's so great that your meals can be a part of that.
Thanks.
Like, it saves my butt all the time.
So you have that niche. Is there a way to make that easier, or can you explain how you navigate that, or is it just trial and error?
A little trial and error, I would say. I think I don't recommend people go standard American diet to AIP keto. I would say either do AIP first or do keto first, and then try and overlap, you know, like master one before you try and overlap something else. Having resources. Like I'm not a huge meal plan person or meal prep person, but having a meal plan, having like meals like yours, having a lot of pre-made food helps for that kind of thing. Because you will find that moment where you're like, I just want something easy. We all have that moment. You just want something easy. But that's a difficult thing, unfortunately. Like our lives right now with work and the kids and the activities, and it's just, we're so busy that it makes it difficult to build a life that revolves around healing and preparing your foods how we should. It's just, you know, like we live in a modern world, but like we're not evolved to yet. And so, yeah, being prepared, having a lot of meal prep. I have some meal plans and stuff on my blog, and like my book has some AIP keto recipes in it. Because I can't do nightshades and I don't really eat nuts, like I'm dabbling now. It's just organically, a lot of my recipes fall into that category. And as keto blows up and more people want to try it, then you get people who are like, I want to keto, but I can't eat eggs, or I want to do keto, but I can't eat dairy, or I want to do keto, but I can't eat nuts, or I want to do keto, but I can't eat any of the above. And then essentially it's like, well, then you need an AIP keto, right? And so that's kind of where like my stuff comes in, a lot of your meals, because it just really helps people move it along, trying to troubleshoot, you know, this healing through food thing, right?
Absolutely. And our customers, a lot of them are too sick to cook for, you know, and we love to hear stories when they've gone from being too sick to cook to feeling so much better. We get these testimonials, and it's like pretty amazing to read. So we like to share that with the whole company, so they understand, like, you know, what we're doing. So so pretty amazing. So there's a lot of people that are just, they can't really cook
Right,
for
the
themselves.
fatigue, or they have pain. Right, absolutely, right. Like fibromyalgia, you get people with rheumatoid arthritis, lupus. I mean, there are, right, a lot of autoimmune diseases are absolutely debilitating.
Absolutely. See, I had some earlier questions I'd written down, and I think we kind of covered a few of them. I think it went a little bit back to the basics. There's probably, you know, different people who are listening or have different levels of knowledge, or, you know, maybe just came onto this right now, you know. So so you always hear about macronutrients, and I guess kind of two-part question, maybe what, at the very basic level, what are they? And then what if you're not a counter?
Right.
Nutrients.
So macronutrients are fat, carbs, protein, right? There's 3 macronutrients. And I guess water, but, you know, no one really tracks that. And so the micronutrients then would be all the other things, like the minerals and all that, right? The vitamins. But we eat macronutrients in like the biggest amounts. And they kind of carry all the other things inside them. So the reason why macros it's such a topic on keto is because there's that thought that you have to pertain to a certain macro. Like, these are the macros, and if you're not doing these, you're doing it wrong. I don't really like that sentiment, but essentially the traditional keto macros are something like 70 to 75% of your calorie intake come from fat. That doesn't mean that 75% of your plate is fat. It's 75% of your calorie intake, but fat is 9 calories per gram, and then carbs are 4, and protein are 4 calories per gram. So 70 to 75% calorie intake from fat, then you have 20 to 25 from protein, and then like 5 from carbs. I find that that's, and then of course people do net carbs versus total carbs. So net carbs, which is interesting because like in Europe, they just only count net carbs because our body doesn't like digest fiber really. Like we don't absorb it. So you don't like absorb those, like you're not getting carbs from like straight fiber. It's not going to affect your blood sugar. It's just like feeds your gut and then like comes out. So a lot of people count net carbs, which is total carbs minus the fiber, and then those would be your net carbs. So a lot of people do their 20 or their 5% carbs comes from only net carbs, while others count total carbs. I don't like math, and because in the US our labels don't have like the net carbs and whatever, I just tell people, I mean, I rather just count total carbs and then just do more, like allow more, like 10% of my total intake, right? Also, a lot of the carbs I'm eating like don't have labels because they're vegetables. So I'm not too worried about it. However, I always tell people, I think that people can tweak there. There's a lot of room for error in telling people that they can only eat this certain macro goals, because I find I do a lot better with higher protein. Like I'm extremely active. I weight lift a lot. And to stay satisfied, I know like fat is very satisfying, but for me, protein is even more satisfying than fat. And now there's more and more research coming out that, you know, you really can't overeat protein. I know that there's like 2 schools of thought in keto. Some people are like, oh, because if you overeat too much protein, then your body's gonna, because with what is it, like gluconeogenesis, and then it's gonna create, right, it's gonna turn the steak into sugar, and then you're gonna get out of ketosis. What we've learned is that that's not really that common, and if it does happen, it's not that big of a deal. So what we're realizing is that limiting protein, there aren't that many benefits to it. Also, protein's great. Protein's what heals. It repairs your muscles and everything else. And there's a lot of essential nutrition, like B vitamins and stuff that you need from protein. And then carbs, like I said, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but they should come from whole food sources, especially when you're restricting a macronutrient. It's like quality, man. You got to go for those quality green veggies. You got to go like leafy green veggies, cruciferous vegetables. Add in, like, I really like adding in seasonal stuff. So like now that squash and pumpkin is in season, go ahead. They're not really starchy. Like add some squash and pumpkin in there. When berries are in season, enjoy some berries in the summer. Like I think there's something to be said if you're really going at this with an ancestral approach, including seasonal produce in your diet, because that type of variety is going to be really beneficial to your gut. And although it might skew your macros a little bit, God forbid, like, come on, live a little. And so second part, am I for tracking? Yes and no. I understand that some people need to for medical reasons. I understand that some people need to get the hang of it, or for even their success. There's different personality types, right? I do think that a lot of people, especially women, tend to fall into over-restrictive habits when they track, because we're so programmed to like eat less, lose weight faster, that once you start tracking, women kind of start this like little self-sabotage thing where they're like over-restricting because they think it's going to make them lose weight faster, and then they like, and you know, fall off the wagon in an epic way, where I think if you aim to eat intuitively, it makes it more of a lifestyle and less of a diet, and there's a higher rate for long-term success.
And there's definitely got to be something to stressing about, even if you're doing the right stuff and you're stressing about it, that's got to be working against you, you know, at many different levels, because it's not just food. You know,
absolutely, the stress of it,
all the other lifestyle factors, and obsessing over something, I imagine, can't be helpful.
Can't be helpful. There's a lot of obsession in the keto community about metrics. Like, are you peeing on your purples? My strokes aren't turning purple. Like, people like these metrics, and they think that they're metrics for success, but really they're also metrics for their failure. And so then they, like, I've seen posts and people saying they feel great, they're losing weight, they have muscle, they're sleeping great, they're like, all their goals are coming true, but their pee strip wasn't purple. So it means, oh my God, does this mean I'm not in ketosis? I'm doing it wrong? I'm like, yeah. If you feel that awesome, I'm pretty sure whatever you're doing it right. So just don't worry about it. So I think people tend to have this little thing where they like obsess over it. Really, the bioindividuality is so important, because unless you're like getting a DEXA scan and working with a nutritionist to figure out how you should eat, it's going to be really hard for someone to tell you exactly what's going to work for you. So I always tell people to like stay open. You know, there's a lot of gurus out there, but just because they're an expert doesn't mean that they're an expert on you. Mm-hmm. You're not their private client. You're not working one-on-one with them. They might have these guidelines that they prescribe to the general public. Doesn't mean that they're going to like every part of that is going to work for you. You can be like, oh, this works for me, so I'm going to take this and then do it, you know, apply it in a way that works for my body. But that's hard. I think people need a lot of confidence to do that. And oftentimes that's lacking when you're trying a new way of eating.
Okay. So I guess, say you're just eating an AIP diet or whatever, and you're getting a lot of nutrients. So all things being the same, I know this is probably a big range, but could you give a range of like the minimum and maximum of what carbohydrate level someone could be eating and still be in ketosis? I know there's a lot of, there's also, like endurance athletes.
Right. So like the average person, I would say, like average person who maybe goes to the gym 3 to 4 times a week, right? Does like maybe some HIIT workouts or some like cardio. Like someone who's living in like a healthy lifestyle, but not like a crazy athlete. I think that they could I think if you want to be in ketosis, it's more about what carbs you're eating, not always how much. So I think 50 grams total carbs as a max is a good range. So 50 grams total, a day, right? And so that actually looks like if you're eating only above ground veggies and some avocado, that's going to be quite a bit, honestly. And if the funny thing is, if you're eating those 50 grams of carbs from whole food veggies and you take away the fiber, you're going to be in the 20 net range anyway, which is kind of interesting how that happens organically. It's when you start getting into like the keto treats and stuff like that, it gets a little, more harder, I guess, to like manage carbs, I feel. But yeah, like someone who's, I think 50, like anywhere from 20 grams a day to 30 to 50 grams a day is a good range, depending on someone. Like some people are sedentary. Some people coming into keto are sedentary. Either they can't move or they can't work out, and they really need to lose weight. And that's, I think, we're going lower carb comes into play for like fat loss. And it's pretty effective to do like the 20 total. But in that sense, you have to get a lot of bang for your buck when it comes to those 20 grams of carbs. Like I urge people to be like, eat it in kale or whatever, you know, not in like a treat or a keto-fied treat for, you know, nutrient purposes.
So what would be some possible dangers? I'm sure with any fad, and like I said, I really believe in keto and doing it a certain way, but it's also huge right now. So with anything like that gets the attention of a lot of people, there's going to be scientists and cardiologists coming out against it for some reason, which is, you know, probably looking at it in a certain way, which probably has nothing to do with the, you know, all the real food stuff we were talking about. But are there inherent dangers in keto?
I don't think so if it's done right. I do think a lot of the studies that they do with keto, they're using like crap, like they seriously feed them like vegetable oils and like these weird like frankenfood things with like keto macros, and like, come on, that's not the same thing if someone's eating like a, you know, steak and veggies. So I think a lot of the research is like antiquated, that speaks out against it. I do think some of the dangers that fall into keto, and a lot of like you hear a lot of people that try it and are like broken by it. A lot of women who end up losing hair, skin rashes, crashing their hormones, adrenal fatigue. And what happens there, I think, are two main things. Lack of proper nutrition, because they are doing bulletproof coffee all day, bacon, ground beef, and like eggs and cheese, and like they're not eating any plant matter, and they're not eating they're like not eating any organ meat. There's no nutrient density. Other things that I've heard, and like from other just my friends in the field, the nutritionists, is that a lot of times there's a lot of over restriction. There's because of the satisfying nature of the food, and when people go high fat, they're not hungry. And while there are absolute amazing medical benefits to fasting, you're not meant to like do it all the time and like starve yourself. The point of fasting is to like give your body a break, but still get your adequate nutrition within a certain eating window. So you get a lot of people who start getting like hooked on the scale moving, and next thing you know, they're only eating like a pound of ground beef every 3 days, and they lose 50 pounds in a month, but then end up in the hospital. Like, yeah, people have to like common sense. I think people just they get really, and I understand the obsession with weight loss. Like, it's such a big thing in our society where it's like, oh, if you lose weight, then you're going to be skinny, and unfortunately, that's not always the case. So yeah, there is absolutely dangerous ways to go about it. Like if you're drinking a ton of diet soda and processed foods and you're not sourcing your food properly, you can totally you can still like be losing weight but raising triglycerides, and I think that you can, you know, have leaky gut, and then you're essentially malnourished. So there is a wrong, but the same way that like paleo can go wrong. Like you see people, I'm doing paleo, but they're eating pancakes for breakfast with maple syrup, and then they're eating a paleo sandwich on paleo bread for lunch, and then they're having paleo pizza for dinner. And the same way where someone on paleo can like become diabetic from eating paleo treats, someone in keto can also become very sick if they just skip out on quality food and, you know, go crazy with like trying to go after weight loss and not healing, and just being irresponsible, I think.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned it probably in the context of autoimmune disease. I've heard Hashimoto's, but you mentioned hair falling out, stuff like that, and that's an attempt to do a keto diet. But you mentioned some problems they might be doing it in a way that's harming them. Would you suggest, hey, this isn't for you, or we need to look at exactly what you're doing and possibly make tweaks and still try to?
I think there's a few people out there who specialize in this, like keto for women with Hashimoto's, because it definitely, I think, it's an area that's not widely studied even by keto experts. And there's a lot of like there's some people who are like, absolutely no way people with Hashis can do keto, and then there's some people who are like, no, this is really going to work for you. And I really think, again, it goes down to bio individuality. People's needs a lot of like stress, factors are at play there. I think for me, what I've seen, again, going back to the over restriction, I think because of course a lot of women with Hashimoto's tend to have a hard time losing weight. They go keto, they start seeing weight loss, they get really excited, and then they fall into that trap of under eating, chasing those results. And when you have Hashis, you really like calorie restriction isn't a good idea. Your body, like your metabolism isn't regulated. Like you have a hard time creating energy as it is. So plus you have to be careful with like sodium and like iodine supplementation when you're in keto, because you're not retaining water because you don't eat the carbs. And for every gram of carb you eat, like, you retain like 3 grams of water. So like, and being in ketosis has a diuretic effect. And so supplementing with electrolytes properly and all that there's a lot of factors. So I also women, like if you're going to do keto and you have Hashimoto's, find, there's a few books. There's the 30-Day Keto Diet Reset by Dr. Becky Campbell. Elle Russ has her book, which is The Thyroid Solution. And they're both women that have a ketogenic sort of approach, definitely a lower carb, real food approach to keto, specifically for women with Hashimoto's. A lot of people do carb cycling for Hashis. Like they'll do keto, but then at night they have sweet potatoes or they'll have starches with their dinner. And that seems to be a more balanced approach for women with Hashimoto's. But yeah, I think when you have autoimmune stuff, it's worth kind of doing, like knowing what you're working with before just jumping into keto as a cure-all.
You might need to work with someone.
Absolutely.
And find someone with maybe I'm going to name a few type of that you. So
nutritional therapy practitioners, there's a lot of really good ones in the field. Jamie, Gutsy by Nature, and she actually lives right around here. Beth Manos, Bricky, and she's at Tasty Yummies. I love Allie Miller. Allie Miller is a registered dietitian, and she has an online clinic. She just came out with the anti-anxiety diet. She's really good. She's very, very good. I definitely think her stuff is a little more expensive, but she has like a gazillion degrees, and I've never met anyone who understands how body affects the food as much as this woman. I mean, she's a holistic nutritionist and a dietitian, and like, she's excellent. And she has a lot of information on her website and 2 books out. So Allie's someone that I always recommend, especially people who have a lot of underlying issues, because she'll run a lot of labs. She's really science-based, and gives some very like medically sound advice.
I think we can make some notes after this.
Yeah.
So we you named a lot of resources. Maybe
we can link them I'll put them in the comments. We can drop links.
Yeah, that'd be great. So because you mentioned a couple of books, I was going to have you repeat it, but then you mentioned some different people. I'm like, yeah, it'd be great to have that in writing, because that's some gold right there.
Yeah, I'll link it all. It's really fantastic being in this community because, you know, I'm just a chef and someone who figured this all out on my own. Like, granted, I had the food part, I could cook. And I guess maybe having a degree in sociology and anthropology, like, helped my research, like, nerd in me figure all this stuff out. But I always tell people, like, I'm just a regular person who figured this out. And I didn't really work with that many people. Like, I saw some holistic doctors here and there, but I was in Hawaii. I didn't have access to a lot of help. However, as I became a part of this community, I've learned and talked to so many just friends and colleagues. And there's a lot of just really knowledgeable people out there. And a lot of people who have like people's best interests. They're not just selling you a product. They're not just selling you a diet or like, hey, buy my plan. Like, they really want to help you heal. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I myself am in the Nutritional Therapy Association program at the moment to become a nutritional therapy practitioner, because I want to have the credentials to help people in this way, because more and more I think it's needed as people come to food for healing.
Excellent. Before I forgot, I wanted to get to, let's see, going through some of these comments. Hi guys, from Lori in Colorado. So hi Lori. Chris asks, can you talk about your cookbook? Do you have any Mexican food recipes?
So the cookbook, I do have some. I do have a few. So there's definitely more Cuban recipes because I'm Cuban. But the book, I have like a carnitas recipe, and I have a cauliflower tortilla recipe, which they're like street style, you know, so they're the small little tortillas. And I have a fiesta guacamole, and I do like the pickled onions so you can make tacos. I have, what else is kind of like, it's hard. Mexican food is tough without the nightshades. That's a hard flavor to get. My grandmother's best friend in Cuba, she was Mexicana, and so we spent a lot of time in Guadalajara visiting her family, and the food was so good. But I have like camarones enchilados and ceviche. I have arroz con pollo, vaca frita, croquetas de jamón. So there's a lot of Latin recipes in there. Yeah, so definitely like got nostalgic and hidden some flavors from my childhood there.
Yeah, it's cool to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see. I don't have any other questions here. I wanted to mention before I forgot, well, self plug, but we have, I forgot to mention, we have an actual, so our full menu is Autoimmune Protocol and Paleo, but we saw the need to also do a ketogenic menu, but we didn't create any new dishes specifically for that. All we did is we went through, and the foods are naturally lower carb anyway. So we just, basically categorized the items, which was most of them, that had under a certain amount of carbs.
Right.
Now, like you said, it varies. So if you ate 3 of those items in a day, it might be too much carbs. But since it's so different per person, but anyway, we have a pretty good size keto menu. So you could check out our keto menu at paleoonthego.com. We have a discounted keto bundle with some really good dishes on it. So you can find that on our site. I don't have a direct link, but it'd be easy to find.
Yeah, we could drop it in the comments too. I will say, because I've had the food that's really excellent. And what I love about the AIP keto meals that you guys create is that they are really customizable. Most people doing keto are eating about 2 meals a day. We don't really do 3 meals a day because a lot of people do intermittent fasting. It just kind of ends up going hand in hand. But what I like about the meals is that I can then like add stuff to them. Like if I'm super hungry, I'll add a bunch of avocado and like olive oil on top for like extra fat. If I'm not so hungry, because there's also different approaches. People have this thing about keto thinking that all the food needs to be really fatty, but it doesn't. And like a lot of people will say, like even Rob Wolf has this approach where he's like, just with the omission of carbs and starches from the diet and getting adequate protein, your body's kind of going to go into ketosis anyway. Like that extra fat, yeah, it gives you energy, it tastes good, but you don't need to be eating like obscene amounts of it, Yeah, so your meals are really flexible.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. So, let's see. Kathy, I love your recipes. Trying to learn the meal plan is hard for me. Any tips?
So buying a meal plan is always good because they have like schedules. I agree, meal planning, I'm like a super spur of the moment kind of gal myself, so I struggle with that, but I would definitely would suggest doing like a batch cook day. So if you're going to follow a meal plan, get your like recipes out on a Sunday and make like half of them, at least like 3 days in advance. And then again, Sunday night when you go to cook a few extra things so the food's actually ready to go. And then I tend to like to mix and match recipes. Like if I'm going to do a stovetop recipe, I'm going to cook it also with an oven recipe and then a slow cooker recipe. So I'm not just waiting for the stove to be available. I can just kind of like pop something in the oven, pop something in the slow cooker, do something stovetop, and then by the time that's done, then I kind of circle back around and then take stuff out of the oven, and just kind of being efficient with your time in that way.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah. I'm just looking through.
Cool. Let me see if I can pull up these links and I can drop them in the comments.
Okay.
Allie Miller, because she's so good, and I really like her approach to stuff. And there's definitely a lot of good resources out there. I do think that people who need special help, and unfortunately, it's kind of difficult sometimes to say like that if you need a certain level of help working on like with a one-on-one is the way to go. And I think that that's something that sometimes is forgotten online because people are just so used to like blogs and free resources. But I've done it the hard way, as I put it, because I haven't really worked with specialists, and I get it, it's expensive and not everywhere has them. but it's going to take a lot longer. You're either going to like spend the time or spend the money. And even then, like you have to rein your expectations of what someone else is going to help you figure out about yourself, because at the end of the day, like no one lives in your body, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think. I don't think I can leave the comment from this app. I think I'm going to have to open Facebook. Let me go over here. Yeah, I can drop these, and then if anyone has any other questions, if not, we can.
Yeah, you can still, I mean, this will obviously be available, and these are just live comments, but people can leave. If you're watching this later on, you can also ask questions, and we'll make sure to answer those as well.
Yeah, we can circle back, and I'll drop the links of all the resources that I mentioned. I have to search them, and then it's going to take forever, and like you guys don't want to just watch me on my computer for 20 minutes. So, yeah. Anything else? Any other questions? It was really great talking to you, Dave.
You too. Yeah, I didn't know if you had anything else I missed, but I feel like we covered a lot of ground, and I wanted to do this to just be helpful, and even I have friends that they talk about keto, and they come to me because they know what I do, but they're not really asking for advice. They're just kind of telling me because again, be interested, but I can kind of tell they haven't really done much research, and so I know there's a lot of misinformation, so I thought it'd be great to give this sort of information, I guess, how to do it right, and then also put some information together, like what is paleo and AIP and keto, or how do they tie together? What are their differences?
Right.
And can you combine them? So it's
totally
great.
I mean, for me, paleo and keto, like I know a lot of people, it's weird, you hear the vernacular. Like I was watching someone's live the other day, and people like were asking this keto spokesperson, like, do you hate paleo people? And I'm like, why is it a thing? Like essentially there's this huge overlap if you're doing it correctly. I don't think it's like keto versus paleo, like I think that
I saw
it all falls
keto versus paleo. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes like, it's if you're coming through the ancestral health approach, which essentially are the roots of a ketogenic diet, then it kind of all flows together. I don't think it's one is better than the other. Like I always say, these are all just tools that we use to find out what works for us, to heal our bodies, to eat in a way that optimizes our gene expression. So I think as long as everyone just remembers that we're all in it together, it's just one big community trying to heal with food, we can all play nice.
Mm-hmm. For sure. All right. Well, again, I am Dave Rohde. I'm the founder and CEO of Paleo on the Go. Talked a little bit about our offerings at paleoonthego.com, and have with me Cristina Curp. And what's the best? Where should people follow you? Just what really? Instagram, Facebook, both?
Yeah, either. So I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram. I'm very active at the Castaway Kitchen. I definitely do a lot more stories. I guess Instagram is better for that, but I post, and I have 2 Facebook groups as well attached to my Facebook page at the Castaway Kitchen. So I have that in my blog, with tons of free resources online I'm always sharing, and then of course my cookbook, Made Whole, available anywhere books are sold. And soon next year I will be offering nutritional therapy practitioner services as well. So stay tuned.
Very exciting. Our team loves your Instagram stories, and anyone listening, definitely check that out. So awesome. I think we've covered a lot, and I really appreciate your time. It was awesome.
My pleasure.
Let's see. Oh, well, there's one question, if you don't mind. Do you do intermittent fasting every day or spread it out throughout the week?
So I actually do it every day. It kind of happened organically. The thought of fasting was like terrifying, but then I realized that we were eating dinner very early. We dinner at like 5:36, and then I'm getting up at like 6:30, but then not having coffee until like 7, and then I don't really eat until like noon anyway. But I didn't force it, and I still don't force it. So I realized that it kind of was happening organically, and I did it for like about a year and a half straight, and then I took a month off where I was eating breakfast for a while, and then again I just started doing intermittent because it just felt better. Like it feels organic. It kind of came naturally with keto. So I have like 2 meals a day, and then my beverage when I wake up, which I don't really do bulletproof coffee anymore, but I'll do like coffee with some kind of dairy-free milk, and just like a little bit of MCT or collagen, but not like a full-blown boosted coffee. But yeah, so I do intermittent fast. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's for everyone. I think that if it feels right, it feels right. If not, don't push it. I actually just ordered a book on fasting. Dr. Jason Fung, he's like the fasting like guru. Because I do, even for autoimmune stuff, there's a lot of benefits, right, to fasting. It kind of like gives the body a break so it can heal. But going back to people with autoimmune disease and Hashimoto's and just in general, when you have a system that isn't functioning optimally, I think you just have to tread carefully and use your best like intuition. Don't push, don't force anything, you know.
A lot of listening to your body.
Yeah.
So getting in tune with that.
Absolutely.
Have a practice. All right. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time, Cristina. I guess we'll sign off, and you have a great rest of your week.
Likewise. Bye, guys.
Bye.